Hi, Scalable Investors. Thanks for tuning in. Today we have with us Tom Sheppard, author of Millionaire Liar, what the real estate gurus don't tell you about your first million, but Tom will. Tom has also grown a real estate portfolio from $0 to $2.4 million across both multifamily and single family assets, and really excited to have him on the show. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mason. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic.
Good.
So why don't we just get into the questions? Why don't you just tell us about yourself and how you got involved in real estate and all that jazz?
Okay. Well, you kind of covered about the my real estate situation, but I'll tell you how I got into it. Actually, my wife started me into it. Late one night in October 8th, 1999, she was up late feeding our youngest child. Okay, and an infomercial came on, and the infomercial was from a fellow named Carlton Sheets. Some people may have heard of him, some of you may not know him, but he was offering a program called No Money Down, how to buy real estate with no money down. And she thought that would be perhaps a good second income and retirement plan for us, and so she went ahead and ordered the program. At the time, I was actually working full-time and also working on a master's degree in project management at the time. And so I went through the whole course, and I told her it really looked promising, but I really couldn't do work, the degree program, and the real estate all at the same time. I told her you can pick any two. And so we went ahead with the full-time employment and the degree program until I completed that. And then in October 2001, which was basically 2 years later, I went back through the course, and then we turned around and did our very first deal. We bought a $500,000 piece of real estate that month, and we did it with no money down. When we left closing, the only people cashing checks were us and the lawyers. So that was our jump into the world of real estate and our first acquaintance with real estate gurus. And we followed Carlton Sheets' plan, and we were able to do exactly what he said, to buy a massive amount of real estate, first deal out of the gate, for no money down.
Okay. I understand what you mean by that no money down in these loaded terms, but why don't we give our listeners a little bit of background? What is a real estate guru and how you came across? Well, actually, you already told us how you came across this one through the infomercials late at night.
Yep.
But why don't you just give us a little more background on that and your experience, and really what ultimately motivated you to write Millionaire Liar?
Okay. Well, first off, let's answer your questions in order. The no money down is basically the notion that you can do real estate investing without having any money of your own, that you can get into a deal with not having to really go into your pocket, and you can acquire real estate without doing that. And I'm here to tell you that it is possible. I will also tell you later on, we'll talk about why it's extremely dangerous. And it's one of the things that the real estate gurus don't tell you about, because if they told you about it, most people would want to run screaming from the room, and would probably never come back to real estate, which would be sad, because there's really, really great opportunities in real estate. It's really a way that you can become very rich slowly. It's not a get rich quick business. So then you asked about what is a real estate guru? Well, I think if you've ever seen or heard on the radio the ads for so-and-so is coming to town and they're recruiting members for their team so that you can join them and learn how to flip real estate and that kind of thing, those are the real estate gurus. They go and from city to city, and they host seminars, and I call them the We Buy Houses seminars, because what you generally come out of there with is the notion is we want to put up a sign in our neighborhood out on the corner that says we buy houses, and people are going to call me and we're going to go buy their house, and I'll be able to do it without using any of my own money, and I'll turn it over in just a few hours a week, and I'll make lots of money doing this. Because that's what the basic idea is that they put forward in their initial conversations with folks. So that's, that I got into it because I wanted to create a good secondary income stream. And like I said, to create a retirement plan, something that would really boost and add on to anything like Social Security or 401k or anything like that. That answer your question about the gurus?
Yes.
About the what no money down is? By the way, there's whole volumes on how to do deals with no money down. I'm actually an expert on what you call creative finance, which oftentimes involves no money down or not using any of your own money. So.
Okay, right, just more owner financing, just assuming the loan.
Yep, there's owner financing, there's assuming the loan, there are using other, well, when you say other people's money, it can be that owner's money. It can also be hard money lenders, traditional lenders, private lenders. There's really more ways to do it than you would actually even believe are possible. Literally enough to fill a book.
Okay.
Actually, I wrote a couple of books out there that are about seller finance for buyers and seller finance for sellers, just in that general notion. So.
Okay, yeah, I think a lot of the appeal is these gurus will come by and say you can get started without having any of your own resources, and there's obviously a lot more to it than that. They don't really paint the pictures, a full picture about. So.
Well, and they're not. It's not that they're lying, because they aren't really lying. What they're doing, though, is you're not always getting the whole story. Okay, so let's just talk about the typical real estate guru pitch that you get into when you go into a We Buy Houses seminar. You go in there and they'll tell you a story about Joe. Joe went out this weekend and he found this house and he put it under contract and he flipped it for $5,000. Not bad work, not bad money for a couple hours work, right? And you may have heard those stories like Joe or Jane or whoever. What they left out of that is the fact that before Joe put the 2 hours in on the weekend where he got the one house under contract and he flipped it, number one, he did go to some training, so that was some time invested up front, but he's probably spent many, many weekends and many hours in his free time trying to find that house. Looked at a lot of different houses, called people, visited people, and may even wrote up offers to people that they rejected, that he couldn't get them to accept, so he had no contract to flip. And I'm not talking about a house flip, I'm talking a contract flip, which the contract flip is the way that you can truly do real estate deals without really any money out of pocket, because you really can, you don't have to put money down on those things. And sometimes you'll put yourself at risk for a few $100s for a contract binder, but then you get that back as soon as you flip the contract, but it's an assignable contract. So what they didn't tell you is that Joe's spare time meant it was a 20-hour-a-week commitment. And that's the reality that I found out, is that truthfully, if you're going to go and try and build any kind of a real estate business, whether it's assigning contracts or it's trying to flip houses or trying to buy single-family houses and rent them out, or any of that kind of thing, you're getting in immediately for at least a 20-hour-a-week job. So you better figure that on top of your day job, and it will need to be on top of your day job. On top of your day job for 40 hours, you're going to spend another 20 hours working in your real estate business, because you got to learn things, you've got to do things, and you'll spend hours and hours crafting offer letters until you can finally get so that you can do them fairly quickly. So then they only take you 30 minutes or so to craft up the offer letters that you want to do for someone. So it's a lot more of a time commitment than what they tell you, because they say you can do it in your spare time or in your free time. And their definition of spare time and free time may not be your definition of spare time and free time. So
okay.
What else do I need to cover about that?
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I think one other helpful thing would be to understand the variety of gurus that there are.
Okay. Well, truthfully, there's as many different kinds of gurus. Actually, there's a multiple. Whatever kind of real estate investing there is out there, there's going to be a multitude of gurus around each kind of real estate. For instance, if you talk commercial real estate, you'll find that there's a multitude of gurus who can talk to you about commercial real estate investing. Some of them are really good, some of them are not as good. If you talk about buying retail properties, that's another thing. That's not the same quite as commercial. So if you're talking about buying strip malls and things like that, if you're talking single family, if you're talking multifamily, and the reason why there are these different gurus in these different sectors is because there aren't enough nuances between each of these different kinds of real estate and how you do the deal that you really have to become an expert in them. Let me back up for a minute and explain in part how I learned that right away. I told you that that first deal was a $500,000 deal. It was actually a multifamily unit. It was a 12-unit complex. It had 5 single-family homes, 5 duplexes and 2 single-family homes co-located on 2 adjoining lots. So it was all one deal. Well, my thought when I went in, and by the way, one of the things the gurus tell you, which is a correct thing that you should know, is you never go into a property without figuring out what your exit strategy is. So you're already figuring out before you buy how you're going to get out of the property. So my thought in going into this was one of the things I was going to do is immediately turn around and I was going to go get this place refinanced because I was paying, I did it to the seller finance, and I was paying about 8% to the seller. And I knew that the going rate at the time for mortgages and stuff was closer to 5%. So I knew I could go get residential mortgages at 5% and I could, cash him out. And that way I could then have a more sustainable level of debt on the property, at least as far as the monthly payments went. What I didn't know, and this is the difference, and I was reading and studying up about single family residential, and I already knew some about that, and this was multifamily, was that because of the way it was constructed, it was considered a multifamily, and financing on that had to be commercial financing. A commercial loan is very, very different. A commercial real estate loan is very, very different than the mortgage that you've got on your house, the way it's done. Typically on a mortgage on a house, even for an investor, if it's a single family residence, you can often get a 30-year mortgage, meaning that your payments, the amount you paid for is spread out over 30 years, even payments over the whole time. There are several key terms in a mortgage. There's the notion of the term, the rate, and the amortization. Well, with a residential mortgage, most of the time, all those coincide. You've got a 30-year term and a 30-year amortization. Okay, and one interest rate, unless you get a variable thing. Okay, if you got a fixed rate, it's the same interest the whole time. In commercial, you walk in the door. First off, they're not going to talk to you about. And another key term is LTV, which probably your listeners know that, but loan to value. And residential lenders there are programs out there where they can go up, some of them up to 110% in days past. Now they'll go up to about 96% of the property value that they'll lend you. Okay, so you got to come up with the other 4% somewhere on your own. And that's in the residential. Sometimes even residential for an investor, you can get those. Unfortunately, though, for commercial, what they're talking about is 65% LTV, which means now you've got to come up with 35% of the property value from some other source. It either means you had to buy it that low, or you had to do something else, bring more somebody else in with money or whatever to make up that 35% difference on that purchase price. And the financing is usually, they'll do 15-year amortization and they'll give you a 5-year term, which means you have to refinance every 5 years. Now, this is something that some of your folks may remember, some may not, but the big housing crash of 2007, 2008, and when that market, that loan market collapsed, one of the things that happened in that loan market is there were a lot of investors who had to give back the properties that they owned, even when the properties were actually having a positive cash flow. And what happened was that the bank came in and they said, we're not going to renew your loan. You have to go find the money someplace else. Well, the problem was none of the other banks were lending on those properties either, so they couldn't get refinancing. And so, boom, their only choice was they went into foreclosure. They gave the bank deed in lieu of foreclosure. The bank took the property and turned around and sold it to somebody else with a new loan, which is crazy, but that's what happened. So not knowing the distinctions between multifamily, commercial, and single family residential, it can really bite you in the by golly really fast. And the by golly, by the way, is when you get bit, you say, by golly, that hurt. And it will hurt you. It can hurt you financially. It can really hurt you bad. I was able to manage things along on that, but I can tell you that, and I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of myself, But one of the things that I learned, I guess you did ask me what inspired me to write Millionaire Liar. So I'm going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole and come back to this point I was about to make. As you mentioned in my introduction, I had built my real estate portfolio up to about $2.4 million portfolio. I had done almost all of that with little money down, no money down deals, that kind of thing. So I built it up pretty well. But the problem was that it was highly leveraged, which means I had a really high debt to the property value ratio. I mentioned just a minute ago about residential real estate. They'll give you loans for 96% and things like that. Well, with seller financing, you may get a loan. You take over someone's mortgage because they're underwater. Well, if they're underwater, it means already the mortgage value is over 100% of the property value. If you do seller financing, you may be doing it where you're doing it at 90 or 100% or 80% of the property value. And so I had all these properties, but my net value on those were fairly low out of that $2.4 million. And what happened is then when I had some problems, and if we want to talk about what the source of the problems was, I can talk about that in a little bit. But then I had some problems, and what happened is I didn't have any margin for error. As soon as anything went wrong, I had to go into my pocket to make up the difference. So that meant my daily income, my full-time job, my day job, I had to take money there out of my family savings account and stuff, which is supposed to be working the other way to build up the savings account. All of a sudden, I'm having to take it out of the savings account to be able to pay for something on my real estate because I had too much debt to carry. And this is one of the things that the real estate gurus don't tell you, and that I talk about in my book, Millionaire Liar. I was sitting down in about 2014, and all my real estate, my $2.4 million worth of real estate, it was all swirling the drain, okay, financially, and quite a painful time period for me. And I sat down and I said, why on earth is this happening? I'm doing everything the gurus told us to do, following their advice. I was in inner circles and mastermind groups and everything. And I literally had probably shelled out over in excess of $200,000 in going to this course and that course. And I can come back and talk a little bit about that later too. But I'm following all these directions, yet my real estate empire is circling the drain. And so I sat down and I started running some numbers. And that's when the spreadsheet told me something that the gurus wouldn't tell me about real estate. And it's a magic number. They have one magic number that they'll talk to you about, and it's 70%. And it's a good magic number to remember. And the other number I'm going to tell you is also 70%, but it's a different number. The real estate gurus will tell you, and correctly, you should never, ever buy any property, any investment property, for more than 70% of the fair market value minus the cost of repairs. So your theoretical $100,000 home, I'm just going to use that because math is really easy. You would go look at it and you'd say, okay, I'm not going to pay more than $70,000 for this, but I'm looking at this and I'm saying, oh, it needs a new roof. It needs a new water heater. It needs this. It needs that. So everything of that comes right off that $70,000 offer. And so now you're down to, in most cases, what the seller will believe is an insultingly low offer. That's part of the reality of being a real estate investor. So not every deal you see is going to actually turn into a deal. But that number is a good number to remember. Never offer more than 70% of the fair market value minus the cost of repairs. But here's the other 70% number. You should never be leveraged on a property more than 70%. If you're at 70%, anything goes wrong, it's coming out of your pocket. If you're above 70%, chances are it's already coming out of your pocket. And so 70% is that red line. You remember on your tachometer there, some people don't have tachometers on their cars anymore, but there was that red line where if you pushed it too much, too fast, too hard, you'd see that gauge go up there and get to that red line. It means you're going to blow up your motor. Well, that 70% number is your red line. If you're hitting that, you're at serious risk. And I ran this math, and you know how much real estate you have to have if you're leveraged at 70%. Let's say, you told me before we got on this call, Mason, that you're looking to build a business and you were looking to build it up for your own interests and your own reasons. And they were very much the same reasons of my own. So at some point, you want to stop doing the day job and spend invest your time 100% in real estate. Well, I did that. I actually was working for a major national bank, and in 2008, and we got bought by a bigger major national bank. And at that time, I actually left the bank and I said, well, I've got almost 24 properties and I need to manage them. And I think I can run them full time and I can run my business. I can be my own business and do that. So I started doing that full time. And I thought that I would have a decent income. And what I found was I really didn't. And here's what reason why. It was because that 70% number. If you have if you're leveraged at 70%, you have to have $5 million worth of real estate in your portfolio to enjoy a $45,000 a year income. Now, I know that there's some folks out there who look at $45,000 a year and they'll say, "Ooh, that sounds great to me." It's a decent living, but it isn't the lap of luxury, okay, by any stretch. And here's the problem. You got $5 million worth of real estate. You're working day and night, okay? And so you're able to put in your pocket with about a 5% return, you're putting in your pocket about $45,000. And if anything goes wrong, you're not getting the $45,000. So that air conditioner goes out and it's a $4,000 repair. Now you're $41,000. That roof needs replacing and it's $7,000. Okay, now you're down to what, $34,000? So your income's going down, down, down like this with everything that goes wrong. So if you had $1 million worth of real estate that you owned free and clear, you could spin off that about $45,000, but you'd still be, anything goes wrong, you're gonna have to go into your pocket for it. So you really need to have much less than 70% debt on your properties. And that was why I wrote that book right there, Millionaire Liar, was because the gurus couldn't tell me something like that because it would have made me want to run screaming from the room. The sales pitch is that you can do this and make all this money in your spare time. So it's spare time and lots of money, okay? And the problem is it's not spare time. It's a part-time to full-time job and sometimes more than full-time job. And it's not a great ton of money. It's actually a pretty little amount of cash. Sometimes you're doing really good if you can if you can clear at the end of a month $12 a door, and that's not enough to live on unless you got a couple of million doors. You gotta have quite a few doors to get to live off $12 a door. So that's one of the things I learned. That's why I wrote the book, to capture what I learned and to make it available to other people, so that they wouldn't make the same mistakes I did. So that first off, I would never forget. So I can go back here. I'm re-envisioning how I'm doing real estate investing now. I'm in the process right now of rolling out a whole new strategy and approach that I think is going to actually prove very fruitful for me. But it doesn't involve that heavy debt load. That's a key lesson that I learned that I'm going to make sure is applied. And I didn't want other people making those mistakes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to run off people from the guru's seminars, even though some people are going to call me an anti-guru. I'm really not anti-guru. I just think that there are some things that, because of the nature of their business, it's not in their interest to tell you. And they don't want to tell you, hey, if you want to live on $45,000 a year, you have to get $5 million worth of real estate. Well, if they told you that when you came in the door on your very first seminar, how would you have reacted, Mason?
Yeah, I would have ran out of the room.
Yeah, I mean, the learning that you're getting in those seminars is massive. It's trying to like take a sip of water out of an open fire hydrant. And then if they threw that at you, you'd say, oh my gosh, no. All I'm thinking about is do one deal, do one house, buy one duplex and I'll live in the other half. And that's really all you want to start with. And to tell you that you're going to have to, buy $5 million worth of real estate to be able to just enjoy a $45,000 a year income, that's going to make most people run screaming from the room. And the sad thing is that although all of that I said was true, it's still a tremendous opportunity in real estate, but you have to know what you're doing and do it right. You have to figure out that actually part of the cost of doing real estate is that you're going to have to keep that day job, and you're going to have to keep it for quite a while until you can actually manage to have your properties without all that debt on them, so that you can actually have enough cash flow coming off of them that they'll cover their own repairs, they'll cover their own problems, they'll cover the mortgage when there's nobody renting them from you. See, if you own it free and clear, you don't have a mortgage payment. You still have to pay insurance, you still have to pay taxes, you still have to pay maintenance on the property, but that mortgage payment generally is a lot more than all of those other things combined.
Okay, it makes a lot of sense.
So did I make you want to run screaming from the room already? I hope not.
Yeah, well, it's good to just be brought back to reality, and that's why what I found so helpful about your book is that you really help take off the rose-colored glasses and just, you know, pop someone's bubble and just say, hey, here's reality setting in, and while this person's selling you big dreams, you need to approach it practically and realistically as well. So one thing that I am concerned about with guru groups is a lot of times they make you feel like you really need to pay this very large amount of money, sometimes $20, $30, or $50,000. And if you don't, then you're not really going to make it to the next step in your real estate career. But at the same time, ironically, I feel like people get stuck in this learning phase and they're perpetual learners and they never really become real estate investors, and more, some people call tire kickers.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I'm going to make a note so I don't miss it. Here is the big money, and then the always learning. The reality is that that buying real estate is scary as hell. Okay, when you go get a mortgage and you get a loan to buy a property, you know, those attorneys tell you, hey, you know, this is 30 years of your life you're committing to, you know, which is probably more than a lot of people thought about when they got married, you know. They weren't necessarily looking that far down the road. And certainly, you know, anything else you've ever bought never had a timeline like that. And my God, you're talking money that's typically way beyond what your annual income is. You know, you're going in and you're buying a house that, you know, you're a ordinary Joe and you're making, you know, $30,000 a year, and you went to this We Buy Houses seminar, and you go out and you get this house, and you're getting a house that's, you know, even if it's $100,000, well, you're making 30, and that's more than 3 times what you're making. So it's just scary as heck. And there are lots of things that can go wrong. And I'll tell you that the gurus give you a lot of good information about how to keep things from going wrong. They can't tell you everything though. And I'm going to I got to make another note to come back to that, to refresh my point on that. But they can't tell you everything because you really have no way to put in context some of the lessons they can give you until you're further down the road and have more experience. Now, because it's so intimidating, that deters people sometimes, but they want to feel serious about what they're doing. But the other thing that deters people from really becoming a real estate investor is they go to this seminar, and what inevitably happens is somewhere in the 2 or 3 day time frame, some other guy, not your guru, he's going to stand up on the stage, he or she's going to stand up on the stage. They're going to tell you about these other kind of real estate investing. Might be self-storage, it might be commercial, might be whatever it is. Could be even signage, doing a roadside signs, things like that. And they'll tell you this story. And again, we're back to Joe, only this time it's not Joe, it's Bill or it's Susie. Okay, and how they made all this money. And doesn't that sound good to you? Wouldn't you like to make that kind of money for your weekend's work? Well, of course, they're giving the exact same pitch that already sold you to come to this seminar on this kind of real estate investing. So yeah, it's like, that sounds really good. And it sounds like it might even be better or go right along with what I'm already doing. So you buy another course. Okay, so now you've traveled out of town. You've spent 3 days and to learn one kind of investing, and you come back with 3 additional courses, which now that means if each one of those is a 3 day boot camp, okay, now you're talking 9 days plus the travels to and from. that you're going to have to go to. And what you end up in this situation, I call this shiny object syndrome, or SOS. And it's you're running from one shiny object to the next, and you're so busy learning about all these different kinds of real estate investing that you really don't have time to sit down with the first one that you dealt with and actually go and do it and carry it out and execute. So you're so busy, you're like the folks that the Apostle Paul talked about in the New Testament. He's writing to Timothy, I think it was. He said they're always learning and never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. That's where you're stuck at. You're ever learning, and you're never really coming to the knowledge that you need to do what it is you set out to do. And it's a trap. I won't say that it's a trap that the gurus deliberately set for you. Actually, each one of those gurus, they have good information. They've made good money in what they're doing, and they're looking for people who they can sell that information to, who can also then succeed. The problem is you and I, we already got hooked with that first sales pitch. They come at us with another sales pitch. Sounds an awful lot alike, only maybe there's more zeros on the end of it. And it's like, woohoo, now I can really, I can make $5,000 in a weekend with flipping contracts, and I can also make $10,000 a month by putting up self-storage, and it's like, yeah, but you're never going to get there because you're too busy running off to the seminars. So my advice to people in that regard is twofold. Number one, stick with one thing, okay? Do it. And then down the road, once you've done it successfully, and I don't mean just one deal, I mean, once you've built a successful business on that, then you can begin to branch out into some other things, okay, that might be a little more, congruent, be able to go along with what you're doing. But the other thing I say is, and this kind of goes back to your comment about, they say, hey, if you don't spend this $20,000 or $30,000 on these extra things, you're not really serious. You're not really going to make a go of your business. There's two things I'd like to mention about that. One is, my experience is that with all the gurus I've dealt with, and I've dealt with quite a few of them, and I even worked behind the scenes with several of them. I was actually on the board of directors for one of them. So I know what goes on behind the scenes. And I will tell you that about 80% of the really valuable information that they're ever going to give you comes in that very first 3-day seminar. 80%. The irony is that that's probably the least expensive educational opportunity that they're ever going to give you. And so you're going to spend much more for that remaining 20%. So can you make it on the 80%? Yeah, you can make it a long ways down the road on that 80%. Okay. But here's the other thing, and this is a truth. When they say, if you don't do this, you're probably not going to make it. There's some truth to that, because the reality is that you are into a whole new business. Actually, if you want to talk about it, it's actually several businesses. I just posted an article on LinkedIn the other day on my profile on LinkedIn about the real estate business and how it's actually 5 businesses inside of that, inside of real estate investing, 5 different businesses. So you're embarked on a fairly complicated endeavor. And here's what I mentioned earlier, that they can't tell you everything right up front because you're not ready for it. You know the old thing, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. Well, that may sound trite, but the reality is there are going to be some things that you just don't know you need to know, and you don't have to deal with them until the problem starts to come up. And then you can say, oh, how do I deal with this? And then you're ready to be instructed. So that's what they're telling you and trying to get you into these mastermind groups and mentoring programs and inner circles and things like that. And the reason why those can be effective is, once you've got your business running, you're going to find things that you need additional knowledge on. Now, what I'm driving at here is that I don't think you need to be necessarily involved in an inner circle or what they're calling a mastermind group, but you do need a coach and or a mentor, and because that person is the person who you can go to later on. You can say, look, I'm looking at I've mentored and coached people both in the real estate, and I'm going to explain the difference between the two. But in those circumstances, then Mason, if you were my student, I'm coaching you, okay, and I'm going to tell you in a minute reason why I wouldn't coach you, okay, nothing personal. but you would come to me and you say, Tom, I've got this deal. This is what it looks like. Is it a good deal? That's one of the first things you do, because you're just new to the business. You say, well, is this a good deal? How can I make it a good deal? Or you say, what is it that I'm overlooking here? Is there something else here I need to be doing? Well, at that point, your coach or mentor can say, well, have you looked at this? Did you do this? And go do this and go do that. And they can give you specifics, which then can help keep you out of the briar patch. Okay. Now, the reason why I wouldn't coach, Mason, is because I'm not in your market. That's the difference between a coach and a mentor. Okay. I could mentor you because the coach needs to know your market. He needs to know that don't buy that one, Mason. I know it looks really great, and I know that 6 blocks away there's this other property that was absolutely fabulous. What you don't understand is 2 blocks away is where the high crime district begins. And so you go into this property here, you're never going to sell it for what you're putting into it. You're going to lose money on it at best, and it may just sit there for a year, after you've done your rehab, and now it's just sitting there rotting. So you don't want to buy in that neighborhood, even though it's only 6 blocks away from this other deal that you maybe already did and had it go great, or that somebody did and had it go great. So that's where the coach knows your market. And one of the questions you talked to me about earlier was about, what are some of the due diligence I do if I'm looking for a mentor or a coach. If I'm looking for a coach, they need to know not only my general business, they need to know my specific business. They need to know what's going on in my market. And I will tell you that gurus notwithstanding, they don't know what's going on in your market unless they're in your market. And they can come pay it a visit and they can find out some things fairly quickly, but they don't know your market unless they're in your market. If they're investing in your market, they're going to learn everything they need to know, and then they're going to be able to tell you, don't invest over here, do invest over there. Now, the difference between that coach who knows your market and the mentor, both of these folks have been down the road, the coach and the mentor. But the mentor doesn't have to know your market. The mentor just needs to know the business. They need to say, well, did you find out about it? So Mason, you were talking about this property that you think is a great deal. What's the crime rate in that area? Have you looked at that? And you look at me and you say, well, how do I find that out? And I can tell you a couple of different things. Go here, look at that. Or I can say, oh, just go down to your local Papa John's and ask them, what neighborhoods will you not deliver in after dark? Then not to buy in that neighborhood, because it's not going to be safe to go put a house, buy a house in there and you to work on it, and you're not going to get the money out of it, because if Papa John's won't go deliver pizzas there after dark, it's not a good place to be. So the mentor can tell you things like that. So I don't know what the Papa John's guy is going to answer in your neighborhood. The coach knows. The coach knows because he's investing in that neighborhood. Okay? So that's the difference between your coach and your mentor. They both have a lot of the same knowledge, but the coach knows your market. Now, which one's more expensive? I don't know. Sometimes your coaches, you can get them to come on with you and end up becoming partners with them in deals. And so sometimes that makes it worth their time to actually impart their knowledge to you. With a mentor, they're typically not going to partner with you on a deal. You're going to pay them for their knowledge, and they're going to pay them for their time in giving you that knowledge. And then they're going to tell you what you need to know, what you need to go find out, and tell you how to find it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you put it very well. That's exactly what I was thinking as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so one more thing I want to touch on, because we asked about these groups. One of the other things that a lot of gurus sell is they sell what they call a mastermind group. And I will tell you, it's not a mastermind group. The term mastermind group actually has its origins, as far as I know, from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And if you haven't already bought and read that book, you need to go buy that and read that book. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Napoleon Hill actually interviewed some of the greatest tycoons in U.S. history, Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, and others. And he basically uncovered what was their secret to success, and he put it in that book, Think and Grow Rich. And one of the things he put in there was, he said these multimillionaires, because back then they didn't have billionaires, you just had to be a millionaire. One of the big secrets to their success was they had a mastermind group. And what the mastermind group was a group of people, and this is why it's different than what's in the real estate thing, a group of people who had different skills that they all brought together. So for instance, Henry Ford, he hired a mastermind group to be his executive leaders. He hired people who were a lot smarter than him, but they were smart in their particular part of the business. His brilliance was in being able to bring them together and to focus them on a single objective. And so a mastermind group is actually focused on a single objective, and they each bring different things to the table. So if you have a true mastermind group, you might have someone who's got a brilliance at marketing in there, someone who's got a brilliance at finance, someone who's got the brilliance at the real estate, someone who's brilliant in these different pieces, and somebody who's brilliant enough to keep everybody working together without all those egos exploding. Okay, so that was the true brilliance of Henry Ford and Andrew Carnegie and those others. So unfortunately, what you get in the real estate masterminds that are offered by most gurus is you don't have that. And there's two reasons. Number one, what you have is you have a bunch of other real estate students like yourself who are coming to basically another educational event where you're sitting there with the guru and they're imparting some knowledge to you, and you guys are sharing some knowledge back and forth with one another. Okay, so you're basically a bunch of Henry Ford wannabes trying to help one another while getting some additional instruction from your guru and putting a lot of money in his pocket. Okay, so a true mastermind group, you may have to pay for it, but you're paying people to work for you. You're not paying them just to educate you, and you're not paying for the room to be filled with other people who are in the exact same situation you are. So those are not really mastermind groups. So there really isn't the value in those groups that they call mastermind groups is some networking and a little bit of information flow. Back to that 80-20, that's in the 20% realm. And there are other ways to get that. Instead of having to spend, one weekend a month off somewhere, or one weekend every month or every other month with a group of your peers, trading war stories. It's a wonderful experience. You get to know some really great people. You can make some really good friends, but it really doesn't boost your business all that much. And if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go there and I'm going to meet somebody who's got really, deep pockets, so they'll invest in my deals. No, they're the same thing as you. They don't have any money to invest because they went to the same seminar you did, only in a different town, where they said you don't have to have money to make money in real estate. And so they don't have money. And so they're not going to be able to invest in your deals. And they'll talk a good talk, but they don't have that cash to bring to the table. If they did, they wouldn't be in that group actually. So that's the masterminds and the $20,000 groups. There's the truth and the lie to it. The lie is those mastermind groups aren't really mastermind groups. And the truth is you do need some additional help to really make it happen and to really build your business to be a true success. That being said, you can enjoy a level of success without any of that. Because if you can read and you can listen to the materials that they gave you, read the materials they gave you, they do give you enough to start your business and to start doing deals. So I will say this, and I want to make sure everybody's really clear. I don't recall any real estate guru seminar that I've ever gone to, and I've gone to a lot of them, in which they did not give you the basic tools you needed to do the business. They did give them to you. They gave you the instruction, they gave you the information. So if you're not doing real estate after attending one of these, it's for a different reason. Now, I said they don't give you everything, but they gave you enough.
And then it's just overcoming your own personal obstacles from that point.
Yeah, sometimes it's fear of failure, and sometimes it's fear of success, and sometimes it's just fear of other people. If you tell them, oh, I'm investing in real estate. Oh yeah, oh really? Oh yeah, okay. Well, I'm buying Amway, and I want you to come recruit into my business, and you'll make a zillion, selling Amway. And it's like, no, it's not the same thing. Yeah, sure it is. It's the fear of what other people say. I will tell you that there are many people who do not have a very high opinion of real estate investors. I've been called a bottom feeder. Well, when you make an insultingly low offer on someone's home, they're usually not very happy about that. That $100,000 house, first off, if you just offer them $70,000 because it's in pristine condition and you're not going to pay more than 70% of fair market value, and you offer them 70 grand on a $100,000 house, they're going to show you the door in most cases, unless they've got some other really good motivation they're probably going to show you the door. So that's what you have to live with. Now, I will tell you, I had an instance in which I was looking to buy a mobile home mobile home park. And after all the dust settled, the seller said, said this through the real estate agent I was dealing with, said, well, tell him to go steal a mobile home park from somebody else. And because my offer was very low, what I didn't tell the agent, didn't bother to tell the agent to go tell the seller was, you could tell him, quit lying to other real estate buyers about, try to cheat him out of what it is you're trying to sell him, because he was trying to sell me like a 20 slot mobile home park, and he'd run what was called a pro forma, which means the form it will take, and showed me all these lovely numbers about how much money there was to be made on this 20 lot mobile home park. And the problem was that 9 of the lots had never been developed. And of the 11 lots that were developed, 4 of those had no houses on them. And so that meant of the 8 that remained, half of those were not renting. There was nobody in them. So basically you come down to 4 units out of a 20 unit. So it's what, 20%? 20% of the pro forma was real. Only 20% of the income was real. Well, when you consider that in most real estate deals, you end up with about a 60% operating expense, that means it was way, way in the red. It was almost like I was going to have him pay me to take the park off his hands, because he was, oh, but it's okay that they'll permit you for those other spots. Yeah, trust me, pat me on the head and trust me. Yeah, they'll permit you for those other spots. Well, even if they permit me for them, I've still got to run the electricity, the plumbing, all that good stuff. So I've got all these other expenses. It's funny, they say in real estate, all buyers are thieves and all sellers are liars, and that was the case in that one. So if you're a sensitive person, real estate investing is probably not going to work for you, because it's got lots of scary things and some confrontation with people. So yep, those are all good reasons to not do it. You got to have a really good reason to do it.
Yeah, I think it is important to know your own personal why, and
yep,
everyone has their own situation. I think that we've hit on most of the major points. I think it was really helpful how you explained that from your own experience, when you didn't have a margin of error, you had to dip into your own personal savings. And
yep,
the reality is that real estate can be often a large time commitment, and you may not make a lot of money from that commitment. And also, like, knowing the difference between a coach and mentor, where your coach really needs to be local to your market. And if it's the guru, he definitely got to make sure he's local to it and knows what he's talking about, and not just a fly-by-night type of guy that's going to go to the next city tomorrow.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is when you're talking about the gurus, I think you mentioned, and we talked about Phil Grove. Phil and Chanel are really great people. I know them. Dealt with them quite a bit. And I think they're in Austin, right?
Yes,
I think that's
right.
where they're headquartered. So, if you were looking at Phil Grove to coach you, he can tell you about real estate in the Austin area, because he could coach you, and he could mentor you anywhere in the United States, but he could coach you in the Austin area, because he does deals in the Austin area. He does them all the time. So he knows, 3 blocks over, you want to stay out of that neighborhood. He knows that. And that's that. But the problem is that, as you mentioned, Phil's also got his own business to run, and he's on the road a lot, talking to people about the real estate business. So, because that's part of his business too, is that whole educational arm. So it's difficult to actually have a real estate guru as your coach, for those 2 reasons. Oftentimes they're not local, and when they are local, they still have a lot of other demands on their time that makes them more inclined to do mentoring than it was to make them do coaching. Although many times what they'll do is they'll set up a coaching program where they will basically co-opt other folks who are successful in that particular geographic market. And so you sign up in their coaching program, but you're not actually working with them. You're working with Jane Doe, who is a successful real estate investor in your market, but she's not, Phil. And I don't know that Phil does that. I'm not saying that Phil does that. I'm just saying that's one of the models that they do, is that they set him up with a whole school of coaches. That's a perfectly valid approach. It just, you want to make sure you know what you're getting. Are you getting coaching directly from the guru, or are you getting coaching from one of his hired coaches? Either one works. It's just, you want to make sure you know what you're buying.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, reflecting on all this, is there anything else, any other advice that you give someone for starting out?
Any other advice for starting out? Well, I'll say the same thing that that almost every guru says, and that is, do it. You're never going to do your first deal, sitting in your home looking through the binder or listening to the tapes. You have to go find the deals. You have to go find the opportunities and create the deals. And that's an important distinction, by the way. The difference in this business between being good and being lucky is that being lucky, even a blind squirrel can find a nut once in a while. Okay, that's luck. So you might stumble into a good deal once in a while without anything else. But if you're good, it means you've built the processes, you've taken the time. And now, mind you, don't get me wrong. You start out just trying to get lucky. Okay, you start out just trying to get lucky. But you follow the guidelines that the real estate gurus have given you, which are these processes to go find the leads and find the people who are motivated to sell and find the people who want to buy and all that kind of thing. And initially, there's a significant amount of luck in it. But once you get the processes down pat and you understand them and you've done it 2, 3, 4 times, then you've got it built into a system. And when you have a system, you're good. You're not lucky. Because with a system, you don't find deals, you make deals. Big difference there. I can actually make deals almost anywhere. I can make deals almost anywhere, and I've made deals all over the country. But I don't have to find deals. I can make them, and that's because I have processes and systems to do it. And that's what actually catapults the businesses of these real estate gurus who actually invest in real estate into that echelon, is because they get processes and systems. I will say this: Bill Grove, knowing him personally and having been one of his students and worked with him behind the scenes, he's got a really good process and systems, and he teaches you his processes and systems. So he's got if you can do what Phil teaches you, you can build a good real estate business. And so I don't really have any bad things to say about Phil and Shanoa. They're good people. Like I said, I know people are characterizing me as the anti-guru since my book, but it's not really that I'm anti-guru. It's just that you need to know what you're buying. It's kind of I'll call it a truth in advertising, so that you know what you're really getting and you understand what you really need and what it is that you're really getting. Like I said, for some people, knowing the truth is going to make them run screaming from the room. And frankly, if I were trying to be a national real estate guru, and I could name dozens of them, but if I were trying to be one of those guys, I wouldn't want to tell you all this stuff either, because I wouldn't get you. First off, I wouldn't get you to the 3-day boot camp that you pay $1,000 or $5,000 for, depending upon what it is. And you sure as heck would never, if I told you in the 3-day boot camp, if I told you that in the free afternoon seminar, you wouldn't come to the 3-day boot camp. 80-90% of those people would never come to the 3-day boot camp. And if I waited until you're at the 3-day boot camp and I tell you that, 80-90% of those people are going to run away screaming too. And they're not going to look at anything else. And so they're not going to go over and buy the course on the self-storage, and they're not going to buy the course on the mobile home investing, and they're not going to buy the course on the commercial investment, because they've already left the room. They're already gone. And it's sad, because if they would, look at it rationally and say, okay, so if I know the cost of doing this business, I can mentally, emotionally, and financially prepare for it. and I can still be successful. And I may look at that seminar, by the way, on self-storage, and I may say, you know, that really suits me better than dealing with, you know, single family residents. I don't really want to deal with, you know, all the stuff around tenants. I mean, it's true some people will still tear up a self-storage unit, but there's a lot less damage they can do in that corrugated steel cube than what they can do in that 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. You know, they're not pouring concrete down the toilet in that storage unit because they're PO'd because you're evicting them because they didn't pay the rent for 6 months. Not that that's ever happened.
I'm sure it happens to someone every now and again. So
That's right. So the big thing I would say is get started. The other thing I will say, and I'm laughing a little bit because I am the anti-guru, but the other thing I would say is you do need to get a coach or a mentor or both, in addition to whatever course you got. And you may not need it immediately, but you probably should get it fairly soon. You think about every major athlete, or even for that matter, every major performer that you've ever seen. All of them have coaches. You know, Tiger Woods is renowned, you know, as a golfer, and yet he's got a driving coach and a putting coach. You know, he's got more than one. He's got coaches for different parts of his game. And are those guys better than him? No, but they're probably better at putting and better at driving than he is. But they're just not better at both. That's him. He's better at that than either one of those two individuals. But the guy who's his putting coach can teach him how to do that putting better. But that guy can't really hit the drives down the course, so he can never be that professional golfer like Tiger Woods is. You know, you go to baseball teams, batting coaches, you know, all that kind of stuff, catching coaches. They got all kinds of coaches that they do. That's just, most of us tend to think about the coach for the whole team, but actually those individual players have their own individual coaches on the things that they need to work on. And so, to my view and from my experience, is that I think that every real estate investor does need to have a coach or a mentor. Do you need to spend $20,000 on it? Probably not. Probably not. And this is the point, by the way, if I'm a national guru, I start doing my pitch and telling you how you can get me to be your mentor. And actually, I am going to do that because you can get me to be your mentor. I won't be your coach for the same reason I told you, because I'm not in your market. You know, if you're here in my market, I'm in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And if you're in my market here, then I might know enough that I'd consent to be a coach. And I've coached some folks around here. But I am opening up a mentoring program. I will tell you that I do have a full-time job during the day working for a major national bank. I'm a program manager for them. It's no secret. If you go look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that. So I do have, you know, a 40-hour-a-week job in addition to my own properties that I'm managing. Even though right now I'm mostly divested from real estate because the market hit a very good high, and I believe in the axiom, this is buy low and sell high. So I got out of the market and I have most of my real estate stuff sitting in cash right now. So I'm not in the market, but I know this business. I understand this business, and I can mentor someone in any part of the United States because I know all aspects of the business. So I'm actually taking on, because of those time constraints, I said I'm willing to take on no more than 7 students. No more than 7 students. So if any of your listeners would like to, you know, ask me to mentor them, I will, up to 7, and they can contact me, and let me give you the email where they can contact me at. And I'm making a little play on this anti-guru, but it's T Sheppard, and that's SHEPPARD, T Sheppard at it's realestateantiguru.com. And you can put that as re-anti-guru.com. And if they reach out to me there, I'll be happy to have a dialogue with them, and we'll see if it's a good fit, and if it is, and if they think the price is right. Because I'm easy, but I'm not cheap, but I'm not $20,000 either. And if they think it's a you know, a good fit, I think it's a good fit. I'll be happy to mentor them. I'm like no more than 7. What I'll offer in my mentoring program is we are going to do one of those calls. I'm not calling it a mastermind. It's just a conference call. Once a month, we'll have a conference call with all 7 of the folks in the group. And then once a month, they'll have a one-on-one with me, more if they really need it, and then unlimited email that I can coach them and mentor them on their, I shouldn't say we're coaching, but I can mentor them on their businesses and help them avoid making some of the mistakes I've made. And also a lot of the mistakes I made along the way, I recovered from in my business and learned how to do it and got those systems and processes in place. And so I can mentor them. And hey, now that you're at this stage of the game, you need to start thinking about this. You need to start looking beyond. So, I can mentor folks on pretty much every aspect of the business, establishing your brand, marketing, networking for deals, funding, creative finance, finding leads, evaluating needs, picking your niche. Now, we talked earlier on about SOS. That's really important to get beyond the SOS. You got to get out of that cycle of the shiny object syndrome, and you got to pick your niche. Even if you don't think you're going to stay there forever, that like you really think you want to end up doing strip malls, or you want to end up doing 100-unit apartment complexes or whatever. If that's where you want to start there. But if you've started in single family real estate, which by the way is one of the easiest places to start in this business, then that's the kind of thing that you need to decide up front and say, this is what I'm going to do until I've built it to a business that I can actually consider doing something else along with it, or instead of, maybe at some point I'll divest of this and I'll, like Monopoly, where you buy 4 little green houses and then you sell them, get the hotel. It actually, the crazy thing is that actually that's the way the real estate game works. It really does work like Monopoly. You buy up the 4 little houses and then you move them up to another thing. There's something called a 1031 exchange, which allows you to do that tax-free. So, there's that. It really is Monopoly. But I can mentor folks in that. I can coach people in my own market, but I don't want to do coaching because right now I don't want to go out and be driving houses and driving neighborhoods with somebody. I don't have the time for that. What I do have the time for is to help people grow their business by keeping them out of the pitfalls that naturally are going to come up, and to give them the heads up and tell them how to learn the things. In some cases, that's what I'll tell them, is how to learn what they need to learn to take their business to the next step. And in some cases, I'll be telling them, go talk to this, go buy this course from this guy or that guy, because there's some really good businessmen out there and business ladies out there who give us the other aspects to our business that we need. They can give us that education.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks again for your time, Tom, and I'll put your email in the description of the episode as well. Make sure everyone has it. But again, that was T. Sheppard at reanti-guru.com, right? Yep,
and I'll email that to you too, so you can get it right. Make sure it's not wrong there. And make sure that this is for your listeners. If they contact me and they want me to mentor them, make sure they mention your name or this podcast. So that way I'll know what they're doing. Also, they could reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can find my profile out there on LinkedIn. They can reach out to me through that, a direct message in that, or post a comment on one of my articles or whatever, and make sure tag me so that way it comes to my attention. But they need to mention your name so that I know where they're coming from. I get requests for LinkedIn connections all the time. And sometimes it's just out of the blue. It's, Jane Doe wants to be a connection. Well, I don't know if it's someone who really wants to network and to build a business, and to see how we can help one another, or if it's just some weirdo who's looking for a date or to scam me or something like that. I just don't know. And if they send me with a message, they send me a message and say, I saw your podcast with Mason, really wanted to talk with you about this program. Then I know. It's not just out of the blue. It's somebody who actually has a legitimate, good reason for wanting to be, in my network and in my connections. And I'll send you, if you want, I'll send you my my LinkedIn, the address, so that you can put that up along with the email, so that way they can see that. So I have no problem with people reaching out to me through LinkedIn or through that email address that I'm giving you.
Okay, perfect. Well,
Anything
thanks
else?
again. I think that's it for now. I mean, always until next time. But again, thanks a lot.
All right.
Happy to-
Chewed your ear off long enough, did I?
It was great. Really enjoyed it.